一宿没睡，结果还是一样的，涨水了。
下面看自己家田地的那份无奈，那份不舍，那份无助的时候，我心里有多心酸，他们有多。
On October 20th, Typhoon Samba hit, causing heavy rain and flooding in Guangdong's Zhuozhou, Yangjiang, Wyoming, and other areas. Many streets turned into waterways, and numerous vehicles were swept away by the water. Apart from Yangjiang, Zhanjiang, Wyoming, and Yunfu also experienced heavy rain, leading to severe flooding. Local internet users expressed concern, with some saying Wyoming is hit even harder. The streets in my hometown of Zhenzi town are all submerged, and others reported, my town is flooding all the way to our homes. Cici River in Suzi is close to overflowing, and this much rain in early winter is really unusual. This year, China has faced several typhoon impacts, leading to widespread flooding. Beijing, Hebei, Tianjin, and other places experienced major floods. To protect major cities like Beijing and Xi'an, and authorities diverted floodwaters to several areas in Hebei, causing significant losses to local residents and sparking public discontent.
我看到一张张熟悉的面孔，站在高处往下边看自己家田地的那份无奈，那份不舍，那份无助的时候，我心里有多心酸，他们有多难过。我这里是五常市营城子满族乡南土村，我生活了31年的家乡。98年的大水我才5岁，13年的大水我亲眼目睹了。如今2023年的大水真是惨不忍睹。现在外面还在下着雨，我不知道什么时候才能停，什么时候这场水灾才能过去。真的是像在做梦一样，但是其实这是真的，这不是梦。大水带去的不只是我们的稻田，它更是我家乡父老乡亲的命啊！眼睁睁地看着自己辛苦1年的劳动成果，还有2个月就丰收了。如今一点一点的，看着没有被这洪水淹没，颗粒无收，房屋进水，啥办法都没有，人员撤离，不知道何去何从，有的都上我们村子的学校啥的去住了，倾家荡产呢，3年都白干。就算是以后老天爷赏脸风调雨顺，我们还得奋斗3年。
Xi Jinping emphasizes the importance of sharing stories about China with the world. However, the true narrative he desires raises several questions about China under communism. Does he intend for us to discuss the struggles of rural Chinese farmers who have been directly affected by recent floods in China? Alternatively, does Xi Jinping expect us to solely extol China, heap praise upon him, and applaud CCP, all while overlooking systemic issues such as inequality, restrictions on individual freedoms, and a range of challenges within the nation? These disasters collectively affected 16.1 million people to varying degrees, resulting in 147 deaths or disappearances due to the disasters. Emergency relocation was provided to 703,000 people, and 4,300 houses collapsed, while 8,400 sustained severe damage and 40,000 suffered minor damage. Agricultural crops were affected over an area of 3,134,000 hectares, with direct economic losses amounting to 41.18 billion yuan. July witnessed the heaviest losses from natural disasters in the year. Provinces heavily affected included Fujian, Chongqing, Beijing, Hebei, Inner Mongolia, among others. Key characteristics of natural disasters in July included large-scale river basin flooding in the Huaihe and Yellow River basins, with localized flash floods and geological disasters in northern and southern regions. Late landfall times were noted for some typhoons, particularly Typhoon Zhuozhou, which significantly impacted provinces such as Fujian, Guangdong, and Zhejiang. Drought conditions in North China and Northeast China somewhat improved due to increased rainfall, although Inner Mongolia's central and western regions continued to face drought. Severe convective weather led to storm-related disasters in parts of northeast and North China. Mainland China did not experience any earthquakes with a magnitude of 5 or higher, and the situation regarding forest and grassland fires remained stable.
一宿没睡，结果还是一样的，涨水了。昨天呢，就下了一天一宿的雨。如果水势不撤，再泡几天，基本上就要绝产了。干农业就是这样，从春天撒种子开始，就不断的往地里撒钱。马上秋收了，农民们对这种天灾真是一点办法也没有啊。
Have you ever considered China as a welcoming nation like any other? This perception was carefully crafted by China, concealing its dark realities from the world while orchestrating an image makeover. They harnessed the power of television, suppressed dissenting voices, and propagated a carefully curated narrative worldwide, investing substantial resources in shaping public opinion. In the recent flood disaster in China, the government's practice of staging fake rescue operations for filming has sparked outrage and concern in the international community. Instead of focusing on the actual rescue efforts to assist the victims of the natural disaster, the Chinese government has prioritized creating impressive images for sharing on social media. Images and videos produced on Chinese social media platforms have shown rescue workers wearing raincoats and hats to convey a sense of determination in their relief efforts. However, their attention often appears to be centered on how they appear in front of the camera rather than genuinely helping those in need. This has provoked anger and frustration from both the international and domestic communities. Those concerned with disaster relief efforts feel that excessive emphasis on video production has led to misunderstandings and eroded confidence in the Chinese government's relief efforts. Furthermore, the practice of staging fake rescue operations has had a detrimental effect on disaster management. Genuine relief and rescue organizations need to concentrate on the task at hand, not waste time and resources on making a show for social media. From an ethical standpoint, this behavior has raised questions about the morality of using a disaster and its victims to gain online views and attention. There is a perception that staging fake rescue operations is an attempt to divert attention from shortcomings and weaknesses in disaster management, undermining trust in the information being disseminated. The Chinese government's practice of staging fake rescue operations for filming has raised concerns about the use of emergency situations to create an online presence and draw attention, instead of focusing on genuine relief and assistance efforts. This has led to apprehension and a loss of trust in the Chinese government's disaster management capabilities from both the international and domestic communities. At the front line of disaster relief operations, internet influencers took photos and lived streaming themselves at the scene as if it were a tourist attraction. Some internet influencers and their teams have entered the disaster areas, posed in the floodwaters, live streamed their actions, and shared them online for attention. Such behavior is disheartening. Disaster relief became a show and served as a means for these influencers to gain followers and wealth. But even as the true intentions of China, exposed through events like COVID-19 and their ambition to dominate Taiwan, come to light, CCP persistently seeks to dictate global discourse on China while launching attacks on other nations. When we discussed Huawei's latest phone, which seemingly served as China's showpiece, some Chinese individuals reacted negatively. Similar reactions pervade the digital landscape. You may even encounter comments questioning why you don't emphasize the positive aspects of China. The recent devastating floods that have inundated Beijing and its neighboring regions mark a grim milestone, with experts dubbing them the most catastrophic in over 6 decades. Yet, in the face of this unprecedented natural disaster, the Chinese propaganda machine continues to spin a different, sanitized narrative, a stark contrast to the ground reality. As we witness the unfolding tragedy, it becomes painfully evident that China's approach to managing these calamities inadvertently exacerbates the crisis. Regrettably, natural disasters such as floods and earthquakes frequently transmute into man-made catastrophes due to the actions of the regime, which often aggravate an already dire situation. These troubling developments cast a shadow of doubt over China's competence in disaster preparedness and its response mechanisms. The heart of the issue lies in CCP willingness to resort to extreme measures, often at the cost of smaller, vulnerable towns. Take, for instance, the case of Zhuozhou, a town located to the south of Beijing, home to approximately 650,000 lives. When the floodwaters mercilessly surged through Zhuozhou and its vicinity, towns and villages were swiftly engulfed by the rising tide. In Zhuozhou, the water level reached a staggering 6 meters at the city center, while other areas grappled with deluges as high as 12 meters, equivalent to the height of 6 adults. Inhabitants of the region cried out for help, marooned without access to food, water, electricity, or even the means to communicate via their cell phones. What's even more astounding is that just days before this cataclysm, Xi Jinping had published his grandiose principles on flood management, lending a bitter irony to the unfolding tragedy. The exact human toll remains obscured, but the grim truth emerges. The lives of 650,000 people have been essentially sacrificed to shield the more prominent urban centers. The Chinese Communist Party appears to view human lives as expendable resources, frequently opting to safeguard the metropolises at the expense of their smaller counterparts. This approach entails the rapid release of water from dams downstream, leading to instantaneous and devastating inundation. This handling of natural disasters by the CCP underscores its lack of reverence for the environment and nature itself. The party's relentless drive to conquer all natural elements is glaring, epitomized by its colossal dam construction projects aimed at taming unruly rivers. Paradoxically, these dams often contribute to the problem, exacerbating floods and disregarding the natural world's delicate balance. Although initiatives such as the Sponge City concept were introduced to absorb and manage water, they often flounder due to China's precarious infrastructure and faulty decision-making. Billions have been squandered on these projects, only to be exposed as ineffective in the face of heavy rainfall. Whether we consider the current tragedy unfolding in Beijing or the 2021 flood disaster in Changsha, knee-jerk decisions to release floodwaters have, time and again, precipitated man-made crises, putting countless lives at risk. The Chinese government's inclination to downplay casualties and the inadequacy of its disaster response mechanisms compound the gravity of the situation. Officially, the authorities report low casualty figures, but leaked messages and spreadsheets unveil a far grimmer truth. The propaganda machinery swiftly springs into action, extolling the heroics of the flood rescue efforts while conveniently obscuring the fact that more people have been abandoned to face a tragic fate than those who were successfully rescued. In essence, this recurrent theme in China paints a grim portrait of modern man-made disasters, where the agony of the people often goes unnoticed and unreported. The genuine scale of these calamities rarely sees the light of day, shielded from public awareness. In summary, in the recent devastating floods, including the recent Typhoon Samba, we have witnessed China's approach to dealing with natural disasters exacerbating crises, often turning them into man-made catastrophes. These troubling actions cast doubt on China's disaster preparedness and response mechanisms. The heart of the issue lies in the Chinese Communist Party's willingness to resort to extreme measures, often at the cost of smaller, vulnerable towns, to protect larger urban centers. One example is Zhuozhou, a town south of Beijing, which saw floodwaters reach devastating levels, marooning its inhabitants without access to basic necessities. These actions, often marked by the rapid release of water from dams downstream, exacerbate the crisis and demonstrate a lack of regard for the environment and nature. Moreover, China's tendency to downplay casualties and inadequacies in its disaster response mechanisms compounds the gravity of the situation. Official casualty figures often conflict with leaked messages and spreadsheets, further shielding the true scale of these calamities from public awareness. The flood releases exacerbated the difficulties faced by the affected communities. Some officials downplayed the significance of reservoir releases and attributed the disaster to heavy rainfall. This led to skepticism among the people, and discussions arose regarding the resilience of the Dragon King Temple amid the destruction. Disparities in the impact on different regions also raised questions. In the aftermath of the catastrophe, survivors were confronted with the immense challenge of rebuilding their lives. They came to realize that their health was more valuable than their possessions. Agricultural lands were devastated, affecting livelihoods for years to come. Poorly constructed houses were swept away, leaving many people homeless. Neglected reservoirs failed, worsening the flooding situation. Subsequent typhoons and heavy rainfall continued to bring destruction, with the constant threat of more floods on the horizon. These ongoing disasters heighten concerns about rising water levels and the potential for further flooding.